The divine assignment hidden in pain, why chosen ones are forged in darkness. This isn't some feel-good message. This is not the video that tells you everything is love and light. If you're watching this, it's because your soul already knows your life hasn't just been hard, it's been surgical. It's been an operation from the divine, stripping away everything that was never meant to stay. You've been wondering why your path seems lonelier, more intense, more chaotic than everyone else's. Why your pain goes deeper. Why the betrayals hit harder. Why you never quite fit. It's because you're not here to blend in, you're here to break paradigms. You're not here to just survive, you're here to awaken. And not in the Instagrammable, polished spirituality kind of way. You've been chosen for something much more dangerous, much more sacred. You're being initiated into becoming one of God's shadow ambassadors. The ones He sends not to the mountaintops, but into the trenches, into the systems, into the silence, into the soul of the collective where no light dares enter unless it's disguised in shadow. The first sign you're becoming one of them is this: you've been through more spiritual violence than most people can even imagine. Not just hard days, but full seasons of collapse. You've lost things that were never supposed to leave. You've been betrayed by people you would have died for. You've walked through emotional deserts where your cries echoed into nothing. And yet you didn't break, you cracked. And through those cracks, something holy began to leak out. You stopped trying to fix your life and started noticing the codes in your chaos. You began to realize that maybe, just maybe, your pain wasn't a punishment, it was your preparation. You were being forged. Not to be a preacher in white robes, but a warrior cloaked in night. You were being trained to hold truths too heavy for the average heart. Weapons were formed against you, but you weren't just meant to survive them. You were meant to become them, to wield them. You are the weapon now. The second sign is something you've probably been keeping to yourself. You've started to feel spiritually radioactive. You enter rooms and the energy shifts. People either gravitate toward you or move away fast. Your presence is polarizing. And it hurts sometimes because all you want is connection, but deep down you know your energy isn't soft anymore. It's sharp. It slices through illusions. People feel seen around you, and not everyone wants to be seen. You're not always invited, not because you're left out, but because your frequency doesn't match their fantasy. You no longer attract by pleasing, you reveal by existing. And it confuses people. You're not performing. You're just being. And that being is a mirror to everything they've been avoiding. You're not trying to expose them, your light is just too honest. And that's the mark of a shadow ambassador. You don't enter a space to be liked. You enter to activate. You walk in carrying the weight of truth, and that truth either liberates or triggers. There is no in between. The third sign is the silence you've had to live in. Not just outer silence, but inner exile. You've tried to explain what you're going through, but there are no words. People nod, but they don't understand. Because how do you explain that you feel like you're being rebuilt from the inside out? How do you articulate the sensation that God is taking you apart piece by piece, not to harm you, but to make space for something ancient to rise through you? You felt like you're disappearing, like you're no longer who you used to be, but you're not yet who you're becoming. In that liminal space, that void isn't a mistake. It's sacred. It's the chrysalis. You're not lost. You're incubating. And while the world moves fast around you, your soul has been slowed down to remember power that can't be taught, or to receive codes that can't be found in books. And when you emerge, because you won't return with information. You'll return as transformation itself. The fourth sign you're stepping into this role is that your old desires have died. The things that once excited you, the status, the validation, the applause, they don't hit the same anymore. You've tried to revive them, to chase them again, but it's like chewing on ash. The dreams you once fought for now feel like cages, and you're afraid, because if those things no longer fuel you, what will? But that emptiness, that hollowing, is not depression, it's divine detox. You are being emptied of egoic ambition to make room for soul-level assignment. You are being rewired from the inside to carry a different voltage, one that doesn't feed off attention, but off alignment. You're not here to impress. You're not here to win. You're here to become. And becoming is messy. It's lonely. It's deeply unglamorous. But it's also where real power lives. Not the kind that dominates, the kind that disrupts, the kind that walks silently into the room and shifts the entire atmosphere without saying a word. And the fifth sign, the one that seals the deal, is that you've stopped waiting for someone to save you. You felt abandoned, even by God. You screamed into the void, asking for answers, and heard nothing but your own breath. And that silence, that was the moment of handoff. That's when heaven stopped talking and started moving through you. That's when you stopped being a seeker and started becoming a source. You are no longer the one asking for light, you are the one carrying it, disguised in human pain. You wake up each day not to be rescued, but to be the rescue. Not to be filled, but to overflow. You realize that God doesn't just anoint the obvious. He anoints the overlooked, the rejected, the misunderstood. Because those are the ones who have been tested in the dark. And the dark is where the deepest anointing is born. So I ask you, what if everything that broke you was actually building you for this? What if your exile wasn't punishment, but positioning? What if your silence wasn't absence, it was sacred instruction? What if the one you've been waiting for is actually you? You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are becoming. And not just becoming anything, you are becoming one of God's most dangerous instruments. You are becoming His hidden ambassador, the one sent not to the stage but to the shadows, the one who holds mysteries in your bones, the one who walks through fire and comes out carrying keys, the revelation behind the mask, why your deepest pain was the map to your assignment. There comes a moment on this path when you stop trying to escape your pain and start studying it. You begin to look at your wounds not as weaknesses, but as encrypted instructions. The betrayals, the abuse, the abandonment, the inner chaos, it wasn't random. It wasn't meaningless. It wasn't just trauma. It was training. And not ordinary training. It was sacred, surgical, coded by the divine. Every scar you carry is a sigil. Every heartbreak a sacred contract. And we don't say this to romanticize suffering. We say this because once you reach a certain depth, You realize the world doesn't need more performers of light. It needs embodied alchemists of the dark, and that's what you're becoming. You are the weapon God forged in the places no one wanted to go. And He hid those instructions right inside the places you tried hardest to forget. The sixth sign is this: your trauma has started speaking back to you not as pain, but as revelation. You're remembering things you didn't even know you forgot. Not just memories, but assignments. You begin to feel the deeper why behind every wound. You realize that the things that broke you the most are the exact places you're now being pulled to serve. The same way you were silenced, you are now being called to speak. The same way you were abandoned, you're being called to stand beside the forgotten. The same way you were betrayed, now you carry the medicine of loyalty, truth, integrity. You don't just talk about healing. You embody it, because your shadow is no longer a liability, it's your library. You carry wisdom that no degree, no retreat, no certification could ever give. Because you lived it, you bled for it, you died and came back with it in your hands. If you're becoming God's shadow ambassador, then you've probably already experienced the seventh sign, the collapse of your identity. And maybe it terrified you. You used to know who you were, what you stood for, what you wanted, what you were chasing. But now, it's like you're watching your old self disintegrate in slow motion. You can't go back, but you don't know how to move forward either. You feel like you're in between lives, and that's exactly where you're meant to be. God is not upgrading your identity. He's erasing it. Not to harm you, but to make room for the archetype. You're not here to build a brand. You're here to embody a blueprint. One that doesn't just live in words, it lives in your presence. And that presence is being rewritten through every ego death you've endured. Every time you lost your name, your path, your role, you were being recoded with something that can't be explained, only transmitted. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What part of your identity are you still clinging to because it makes you feel safe even though your soul has already outgrown it? Is it the healer label? The survivor story? The activist mask? The spiritual teacher title? What if I told you that the final step into your real power is not claiming more but dropping everything that no longer resonates at the frequency of your becoming? Because when you walk as God's shadow ambassador, you aren't here to be seen in the traditional sense. You're here to be sensed. You're here to walk into spaces and alter the atmosphere, even if no one knows your name. That's how powerful frequency is. It doesn't need a platform. It just needs alignment. Another sign, and maybe the most misunderstood, is this: you've made peace with being unrecognizable. You're not attached to who others think you are anymore. You've stopped trying to correct their perception of you. You don't need to defend your heart, your past, your path. You've realized that being misunderstood is a part of the job. Not because you're unclear, but because your frequency scares people who still live in illusion. You become a mirror not of who they are, but of who they could be if they let go of the lie. And that makes you dangerous. Not because you attack, but because your truth reveals. And revelation is terrifying to the unready. So you stop chasing clarity. You stop chasing validation. You start walking in silence, in precision, in a level of spiritual sovereignty that doesn't beg to be noticed. You're no longer here to be liked. You're here to be a living interruption to the illusion of the age. And the final sign in this part of the journey is something you probably haven't told anyone, not even yourself. You no longer fear your own power. You used to. You used to hide it, sabotage it, dilute it. You used to pretend you didn't know, didn't see, didn't feel. Because owning your power meant losing things, relationships, platforms, comfort. But now, you're tired of playing small. You're tired of pretending you're not a storm. You've watched the world burn from your silence, and you've realized something horrifying and holy at once. Your power was the missing piece all along. Not the soft, digestible power. Not the curated, love and light power. The feral, untamed, divine vengeance kind of power. The kind that liberates and dismantles in the same breath. And you're ready now. Ready to walk into your assignment without apology. Because you know if the world was going to break you, it would have done it by now. But you're still here, not just breathing, becoming. Let me ask you one more thing before we continue. Are you willing to be the one who doesn't look like the light, but walks with it hidden beneath your scars? Are you ready to stop asking for permission and start moving as the answer? Because that's what this calling demands. Not perfection, not popularity, but presence. Raw, unfiltered, sovereign presence. The kind that doesn't just talk about God, but moves like Him in places no religion can reach. The sacred weapon, how to walk as the answer in a world addicted to illusions. There's a moment in your awakening, a silent, irreversible moment, when you stop trying to be a seeker and realize you've become the very thing you were searching for. You stop looking for portals and realize you are the portal. You stop begging the universe for signs and realize that your breath, your presence, your very existence is the sign others have been praying for. That's when the shift happens. That's when the mission begins. You're no longer trying to escape the world. You're here to infiltrate it, not from a place of ego, but from assignment. You're no longer here to be inspired. You're here to be instruction. You are the sacred weapon activated, aimed, and released with intention. You don't move randomly anymore. You don't speak casually. You don't attach yourself to noise. You move in alignment. You speak only when the message is alive. You walk with the kind of presence that makes even your silence dangerous to illusions. One of the unmistakable signs that you've stepped into this frequency is that you begin to see through everything. You can't unsee what you've seen. You walk through the world and feel the hidden motives behind words. You sit in meetings and sense the manipulation behind smiles. And you scroll through spiritual content and feel the distortion behind so many teachings. What used to inspire you now irritates you, not because you're cynical, but because you've grown sensitive to truth. You can't consume what's laced with ego anymore. Your system rejects anything that isn't pure. And no, that doesn't mean you're better. It means you've been cleansed by fire. You've been trained by pain to detect the real. And this discernment is not just for you, it's your weapon. You use it not to judge, but to cut through noise, to pierce through deception, to walk into a space and feel what's not being said and still respond with presence, not performance. Another sign is that you're no longer motivated by impact. That sounds strange, right? Especially in a world obsessed with reach, followers, and influence. But you're beyond that now. You don't need to be seen to know you're effective. You don't need a stage to transmit your codes. You've realized that your power is not in your followers, but in your frequency. And frequency doesn't need an audience. It just needs authenticity. You stop chasing virality and start honoring vibration. You don't adjust your message to be palatable. You speak what's true, even if it costs you numbers. Even if it costs you approval. Because you're not here for applause. You're here for alignment, and alignment is expensive. It costs you your popularity, your comfort, your persona. But what you gain, that's the real treasure. You gain access to divine intelligence. You gain clarity that cuts through darkness like a blade. You gain a connection to Source that nothing can counterfeit. And here's what almost no one will tell you. Stepping into your full power will trigger grief. Deep grief. Because you begin to see just how long you lived in distortion. How many times you betrayed your own knowing to be accepted. How often you shrank to fit into spaces that were never built for you. You mourn the masks. You mourn the years lost playing roles. You mourn the relationships that couldn't survive your truth. And you mourn the version of you that thought you had to earn your worth. This grief isn't a regression. It's a release. It's the final death before the full emergence. And when you let it move through you, when you let the tears speak what words never could, something sacred happens. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to defend your path. You start walking with the quiet, terrifying confidence of someone who knows they are the answer to a question the world hasn't even dared to ask yet. Let me ask you something that can only be answered in silence. What would your life look like if you stopped negotiating with truth? If you stopped editing your essence to be digestible? If you stopped hiding your medicine because others might choke on it? What if you walked as the full embodiment of your assignment, even if it meant walking alone? Because make no mistake, this path will isolate you. But that isolation is sacred. It's where you receive instructions the crowd can't hear. It's where you become dangerous to the system. It's where God gives you blueprints that don't belong to the past, but to the new reality being born through you. And once you taste that level of instruction, you can never go back. You're no longer here to be relatable. You're here to be revelatory. Another thing you'll notice, and it'll shake you at first, is that your energy starts to collapse illusions on contact. People will project onto you. They'll call you arrogant, too intense, too deep, too much. But listen closely. What they're really saying is, you make me feel things I've avoided for years. Your presence brings up what they've buried. Your words activate what they've silenced. You don't need to say much. Just being you fully, you becomes a trigger. And that's not a flaw. That's the function of a shadow ambassador. You're not here to medicate the collective. You're here to mirror it, to reflect its sickness so it can choose healing or not. You're not responsible for their choices. You're only responsible for staying true to your transmission. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you walk in this role, the less you need to do. You realize that energy is more powerful than effort. That presence does what performance never could. You begin to live in such deep alignment that your life becomes a walking prayer. You don't just speak truth, you vibrate it. You don't just share wisdom, you embody it. And people feel that. They feel it in their nervous systems. They feel it in their bones. They feel it, and they don't even know why, but they remember something ancient when they're around you. Something real, something holy, something that says you don't have to keep pretending. You become the permission they didn't know they needed. And that permission? It's the most powerful medicine on earth. So I ask you now, are you willing to become the version of yourself that scares your ego but serves your soul? Are you willing to walk into rooms knowing you carry keys that unlock destinies? Are you willing to let go of what's safe so you can become what's sovereign? Because that's what it means to be God's shadow ambassador. Not a preacher, not a brand, not a polished persona, but a living disruption, a sacred rebellion, a silent revolution, a walking embodiment of truth that cannot be controlled.